Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our second SedMIP webinar and our first model talk. Here we will be talking about the latest effort from the NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory on developing a sediment model for our global applications, regional to global applications. The purpose of the SedMIP webinars is to introduce models and talk about the a range of sediment models that would go towards our overall model intercomparison effort. So to that end, everyone who is presenting has been asked to get into the nitty-gritty of the model development. What were the choices that you made for the processes that to include? What were the observations that you used to validate and constrain the model? And how you tune the model. So today, Subhadeep will be presenting on our sediment model. It's called SeaBed. He'll talk a little bit. He'll get into some of those details. So just like a little motivation for why we are developing a sediment model. So uh, I sit here at GFDL within the Marine Ecosystems Division, broadly under the auspices of our system modeling or system model development. I work on with my colleagues development of the ocean biogeochemical model. And that model, Cobalt, has a very simple benthic component. And that benthic component is largely this reflective layer where organic matter that reaches down to the sediment gets very minimally processed. The burial function is this empirical relationship developed by John Dunn, 2007. We apply another empirical relationship from Jack Middleburg for benthic denitrification, and everything else gets oxically remineralized if there's enough oxygen, and then we have an ability to generate negative oxygen or like an ODU unit. But it's very simple. It lacks process representation. Our calcium carbonate is a meta model that was developed by John Dunn as well on a 2012 paper that is now we would say call it a machine learning model built off of Burke Hale's one-dimensional model from 2003. But this model works really well for coarse resolution. So 1 degree, half a degree, so anywhere from 50 to 100 kilometers at climate timescales. But as GFDL as an organization has moved more towards regional modeling at finer resolutions, we have we've encountered the problem that the sediment cannot be so coarse, so simply modeled, that we need more explicit process representation. So that motivated us to go down this path of exploring what a sediment model would look like within the contexts of the GFDL or system modeling enterprise, and as an application, we are also working on trying to understand marine carbon dioxide removal and the sediment's role in modulating the durability, additionality of marine carbon dioxide removal. So that's just an application. We won't talk too much about that today because the purposes of this webinar series is to get into the nitty-gritty of the model development, but just give you a little bit of context of why we were doing this. So, Subhadeep, do you want to start sharing?
Yeah, just a minute.
Yeah, so Subhadeep Rakshit is a postdoc here at Princeton University within the Cooperative Institute for Modeling Their Systems in their AOS department, the Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences Department. And he sits here at the NOAA Geophysical Laboratory, works very closely with a number of NOAA scientists, myself, Charlie Stock, Nikki Zade, and a range of others here in developing this carbon benthic ecosystems and digenesis model, SeaBed. So why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Jessica, for the nice introduction and kind of laying the background of our effort. So, hello, everybody. Thanks for attending this talk, and I'm super excited to share what we are doing in GFDL in regards to the model development. So, so as Jessica kind of mentioned already, that the sediment. Why do we need a sediment module in Earth system modeling purposes? So, sediment plays a very important role in the coastal and the self oceans, and now with the advent of like the progress of the technology, ESMs are increasingly resolving more finer resolution, and that means they are resolving the coastal seas and the self much better way, and that's where the sediments contribution in the biogeochemistry increases rapidly. And also there is a lot of effort in using the Earth system models for in the regional domain, and that's why we really need to have a better representation of the sediment in these systems. So, however, there has been many sediment biogeochemical work, or like the biogeochemical modeling work has been done, but the explicit representation of sediment biogeochemistry within ESMs are still at its nascence. So, in this work, what we wanted to do, we wanted to develop a sediment biogeochemistry module that can be coupled to the GFDL's MOM6 and Cobalt model, which is basically the Cobalt is the biogeochemistry of the water in GFDL, and MOM6 is the ocean physical oceanography, like the ocean current model, essentially, the physics of the ocean. And then we will try to see how that performs. And then first we try to develop the seabed model in one dimension, and then try to couple that one dimensional model to the ESM system. So the here is the model reaction network that we are using in this first version. So this is the simpler representation of the sediment biogeochemistry. So what we are doing essentially is the POC flux. So the so the the motivation is to use as much as information from the ocean model, ocean biogeochemistry model, to have the boundary conditions derived from the sediment module. So most of the things that you will be seeing is like how we can couple the water column biogeochemistry model, use the information in the water column biogeochemistry model and use it as a boundary condition for the sediment domain. So the POC flux is in the water column, which is the Cobalt model, and that reaches the seafloor. And then we are using this multi-G approach, where we divide the POC, whatever the organic matter reaching the seafloor, in three parts: organic matter 1, 2, 3. This is like fast reacting, slow reacting, fast reacting, medium reacting, and slow reacting part of the organic matter. And then we resolve three respirations: aerobic respiration, which is through oxygen, then denitrification, and all other anaerobic respiration into one, basically following Caroline Sweater 1996 approach. And then we produce DIC and ammonia, and then this basically diffuses up into the towards the um, uh, sediment water interface and then escapes, and oxygen is being consumed. And for the nitrogen cycle, we have nitrification, NMOX processes. Another important thing is that because we want to apply it into a like a what do you say, like a Earth system modeling purposes, that means you also want to simulate the preservation of organic matter under oxygen minimum zone and all those kind of different kind of scenarios. We have this oxygen dependent remineralization rate. That means when organic matter is decaying through oxygen, the rate is the fastest, and slowly the rate of the organic matter decay also slows down with the utilization of the respective electron acceptors. And then you have this, this ODU, which is the product of the other anoxic respirations. This is essentially oxygen demand unit, which then when it diffuses up to the sea floor, it gets oxygen, it gets into contact with the oxygen and gets oxidized, and then create, as a result, creates an additional oxygen demand by the sediment. So now going to the next. Okay, yeah. So here is the diagenetic model equations. So in the model, in the sediment, you have two phases: pore water phase and the solid phase. And this is the model equation, which many of you might be already familiar. And but still, I just want, in case someone is new to this topic, I just wanted to give a brief introduction of how the model equations looks like. So this is essentially the reactive transport model for sediment diagenesis, where you have the transport term and the reaction terms. So for the pore water, which is the solute part of the sediment, the transports are molecular diffusion and sedimentation and bioirrigation. And for the solid phases, which is the solid, for example, carbon, particulate carbon, the transport term is determined by the bioturbation, which is the physical mixing by the macrofauna in the sediment, and sedimentation rate, which is uh, the advective motion of the sediment towards downwards. And yeah, and then and if the aim is to apply this model in Earth system modeling perspective, that means we cannot tune these parameters by hand, but instead have to come up with a way to express these parameters as a function of some kind of information that we can read from the cobalt model, which is the biogeochemistry model of the water. So most of these parameters are basically set as a function of different kind of boundary conditions. For example, bioturbation, bioirrigation, these are performed by macrofauna. So that means if you have oxygen concentration or high oxygen concentration in the sea floor and have a lot of food source by organic matter flux, their activity would be high. And in anoxic situation, bioirrigation, bioturbation would be zero, because there would be no macrofauna. And similarly, the organic matter decay rate is also kind of controlled by these approaches. So we essentially use the Archer 2002 approach and Raddy's Oliver Sulpice's model as well. So these two, and we tuned it further for our purposes. So that's the approach for the organic matter decay, expressions, and for bioturbation and bioirrigation. And in the sediment, for the sediment grid, we chose like a grid of 20 centimeter of increasing thickness. So the motivation to doing so, and we divided into 20 layers, because we don't want to overwhelm the Earth system model with a lot of layers, because that will increase the computational cost a lot. So we kind of, by trial and error, kind of came up with the 20 layers with increasing thickness, which kind of represents the processes pretty well, and doesn't differ too much, even if we increase the number of layers much higher, let's say 50 or 100. It's kind of a nice compromise to have 20 layers here. And we wanted to have a 20 centimeter domain, because we wanted to represent the bioturbation in the sediment, which is kind of a like the average depth is around 10 centimeter, and then have some sediment left for consolidation. So kind of, so that we can kind of express the all the kind of the process that are acting on the sediment. So yes, so now that we have a model, then the questions comes that how do you really validate the model? The global observational data for the sediment is much more limited than the pelagic systems, and large scale data collection is also a highly logistically challenging task. So that's why we have a lot of lack of sediment observational data for the global in the global context. There do exist some global data products. For example, benthic oxygen uptake map by Jorgensen et al. 2022, and there is another work by Lee et al. 2019, which has used machine learning algorithm and observational data of the global TOC uh, observations from the sea, different locations in the map to come up with a like a global surface sediment TOC concentration map. So this also we can use um, as a way to validate our model. However, these two doesn't always give you a lot of information on the mechanistic understanding of the sediment models. And for that, for example, like they do not give you a good estimation of the pore water profiles or the variation of the organic matter concentration with depth and all those kind of data. So for that, we need to really use site-specific observations for detailed mechanistic validation. So we used kind of like a combination of these two observational validation to validate our model. So yeah. So for the first effort, what we did, we chose like a 5 sites on the sea floor of different systems. For example, we chose 5 sites throughout the globe, which represents a different kind of ocean environment, ocean settings. The site 1 is a site uh, on the very coastal basin, it's Stellwagen Basin. Site 2 it lies on the oxygen, it's on the Gulf of Mexico. It's a little bit on the open shelf region. Site 3 is also on the shelf but is under oxygen minimum zone, and site 4 and 5 is on the open ocean at at a abyssal depth. And we chose these sites because they had observational data available, and so we thought that we can use this to represent like a variety of ocean settings. And then we then try to simulate what we can do. And the aim was to kind of come up with a parameterization that can express the benthic biogeochemistry at all these 5 sites. Okay, so so we had these sites, then what observations are important for model tuning? Because, in some cases, there are the observational data can be a snapshot, basically one-time measurements. And in some cases, we can have a seasonality, like a seasonal measurement, let's say for 1 year or 2 year, for example, benthic fluxes and all those data can represent the season, that can have a seasonal cycle. And then how do we rank them for constraining? So some of the data that we generally would try to use for model validation is the sediment total organic carbon. So sediment total organic carbon kind of represents like a time averaged information. So they do not vary too much with different season. On the other hand, benthic fluxes of oxygen, DIC, and all these solutes do have a lot of high seasonality because especially in the shallower oceans where you have high flux of organic matter into the sediment during the spring bloom or fall bloom, and so it can give you a big seasonality. And pore water profiles also kind of gives like a kind of average time information, or may also show some kind of seasonality. So we really need to focus on information that are more constant with time, because if we focus too much on the benthic fluxes, that can give you some biases depending upon when that information was measured. So so what you really need to do is kind of get the trend of the fluxes and get the organic matter kind of right, and also the trends in the pore water profiles. So with that in mind, so here is the model performance for all the 5 sites. Here you see in this diagram, you can see the different depths of the sites, like 74 meter, which is kind of shallow ocean basin, then 130 meter, 250, and then two deep sites. And what you are seeing in this plot is that, the fluxes of oxygen, DIC, ammonia, and nitrate. The gray bars represent the model simulated benthic flux, and the points with standard deviation here shows the observations from that site. For the site A, we had seasonal measurements. So this is kind of the seasonal spread. And for the other side, it was like a time snapshot. So these are all kind of information at one time measurements. Um, so you can see that the model performs pretty well. It's kind of captures the order of magnitude variance across different kind of ocean basins. And especially for the nitrogen, especially for the DIN flux, the nitrate and ammonia, the model captures the direction of the fluxes pretty well as well. Now, going to the next slide, this plot shows the performance of the model um, of the sediment depth profiles. What you can see here, first let me walk you through what you see. So again, you have these 5 sites, and you are seeing the total organic carbon concentration in the sediment, which can be divided. So in the model, we have like organic matter 1, 2, 3. These are highly reactive, slow reactive, medium reactive, and slow reactive fraction. And the sum of all these organic matter 1, 2, 3 is the total organic carbon. And in this plot, you can see these blue boxes. So this is essentially the TOC concentration from the machine learning map. I just plotted for these locations from which we read from this paper. And we are also seeing the concentration depth profiles of oxygen, DIC, and DIN, where you can, the red line represents the nitrate, and the black line is ammonia profile. But you see that in case of total organic carbon, the model performs pretty well where the observations do exist. But you do see that in some cases, the machine learning predictions can differ a lot compared to the observation. For example, in the shallow basin and in the oxygen minimum zone. So in the shallow basin, you see that our model kind of captures um, the observed information pretty well. For the open shelf and the deep ocean sites, the machine learning predicted observation, machine learning predicted TOC, and the observations kind of are similar, and our model also do capture that pretty well. We didn't had information of the observation from this site, so we are just relying on the TOC map of for this site. And a very contrasting situation you can see under the oxygen minimum zone, where you get a very high preservation of organic matter into the sediment in the observational data. However, in the in the machine learning map, which also kind of excludes the uh, sites where they have more than 5% TOC content. So they do see, they do not really predict the site high carbon preservation. But our model could predict this pretty well. You can similarly see for the other pore water profiles, the trends are generally pretty fine whenever you have the observations present. So now if we really need to think about like what were the philosophy when we were tuning the model. So essentially we, first what we did, we tried to kind of tune the reactivity of the organic matter decay rate, which is the most important parameter in the sediment biogeochemical processes. And what we try to do is like try to come up with a way to represent the organic matter decay and their different fractions of organic matter, the organic matter 1, 2, 3, so that that set of one set of parameter kind of represents the TOC concentration into the sediment pretty well, or like close to the observations. And then we played with the parameters for oxygen, for the nitrogen cycle parameters to get the direction of the fluxes right, and kind of the pore water profiles right as well. And on doing so, it kind of also matches the benthic fluxes of oxygen pretty well as well. Another independent independent validation that we used for our model is to capture, compare the seabed model predicted denitrification rate with some of the empirical equations that has been proposed throughout the years. So we used the Middleburg's 1996 papers, equation 1 and 2, and Boyle and et al.'s 2012 papers. There are two equations that they gave for empirical estimation of denitrification. So the brown color basically shows the model prediction based on the seabed, and different color shows the different papers. And you can see their trend is kind of pretty, I mean, even though they are not, the trends are pretty well. So this kind of give us like an independent validation, because when we were tuning this model, we did not really look into this comparison, but this comparison we did after we done tuning. So now that this model is working properly, we can then move towards the MOM6 cobalt SeaBed coupling. So I mean, if someone has any burning questions, you can ask me at this point, but we can also ask after few minutes as well. So okay, I'll just proceed for now. So in GFDL, GFDL has like our system model, which has a lot of different components. For example, land component, atmospheric component, and ocean component. In the ocean, we have this MOM6, which is the physical oceanography part, or the physics of the ocean, which then and we have another model called cobalt, which is the biogeochemistry of the ocean. So this relies on the MOM6 for all this kind of transport and all. So the cobalt essentially is the biogeochemistry component of the GFDL ESM. At the base level, like basically before there was seabed, the cobalt had the sediment processes were most of the time empirically parameterized. So it essentially basically has a reflective boundary. That means whenever organic matter reaches the seafloor, it instantaneously transforms into a remineralized form, and gives the instantaneous feedback to the bottom water. So that means there is no really a memory of the sediment in the GFDL ESM system. Um, so what essentially cobalt does is they calculate simple benthic fluxes to account for the sediment processes. So our aim is to represent the sediment in a more mechanistic way, and then calculate these benthic fluxes in a more realistic way, so this now once the seabed is coupled with the cobalt, the fluxes would be calculated more realistically, and the model will also have information, the memory of the sediment, so you can basically track things into the sediment. Yeah, so basically the sediment memory will be, this approach will give sediment memory in the GFDL ESM model. Yes, so to do that, what we did, we essentially created a new module within the GFDL modeling system, and that is essentially lies within the sediment biogeochemistry, ocean biogeochemistry portion, along with so previously there was only a generic cobalt, and then we now have a new module called generic seabed, which essentially gets called within the cobalt call in the when you run the model. So when we wanted to do the SeaBed thing, because so the Cobalt basically acts on MOM6. So all the infrastructure, essentially, the Cobalt uses all the infrastructure of the MOM6 model for all of the calculations, transport, and all those kind of stuff. However, when we are introducing a new domain within the GFDL ESM, the sediment domain, the MOM6 or the GFDL ESM in general doesn't have any memory of or like information of the seabed model. So it is essentially like a new kind of component that we are kind of trying to add. So, so one good thing, or like one thing that kind of acts in favor of seabed model, is that the sediment can be modeled as a bunch of uh, one-dimensional vertical like columns, because the sediment doesn't move side by side or lateral transport. There's no lateral transport within the sediment, so you can basically simplify um, the model and basically only focus on the transformation at the vertical direction. So that's why we use that kind of makes a little bit the job a little bit simpler, or like easier, um, because we do not have the horizontal interaction with the adjacent grid cells. Um, so what we did is, yeah, so essentially we use the MOM6 XY grid, like the lat long grid, and then introduce as like a Z for the sediment, and kind of that same uniform grid layer that I showed. Yes, and then yeah, what we do next is, yeah, so in this effort, some of the major milestone that we had to do is basically come up with a tri-diagonal solver for the seabed, because we cannot use some of the solver. Essentially, when I was doing it in the one dimension, I was using R programming language for most of my testing and all those kind of stuff, but that I cannot really use within the GFDL ESM thing, right? So we had to come up with a new tri-diagonal solver for the seabed, which essentially handles the transport, and this is different from the MOM6 tri-diagonal solver, which basically transports the things for the Cobalt model. So it's like a new solver that is within the seabed module, and kind of gives its independence compared to the MOM6 setup. And then we also had the routines for initializing tracers, wrote diagnostics for seabed model, and came up with a way to restart the GFDL ESM outside of MOM6 ocean model, because this essentially, again, MOM6 doesn't have any information, so we really need a way to restart the model, restart capabilities. And then the methods for spinning up and resolving issues with the model time step, because sometimes you need much smaller time steps for the sediment processes compared to much larger time steps for the when you are running the model um, like the ocean model. Yeah. And so next slide is, yeah. So some of the challenges is that, essentially for the spin up, because in the GFDL ESM configuration, if you want to really spin up the model, it will take much like very long time before it kind of reach the seafloor, reach the steady state. So we essentially ran the model offline to kind of create steady state seafloor, and which then use as a initial condition for our coupled run. So here is the spinned up version of the sea floor, which you can see. For the top plot is the sediment surface total organic carbon, where you can see kind of captures the variation of the total organic the surface TOC throughout the globe. And in the bottom panel, you see benthic oxygen uptake information from the steady state sea floor. And then when we run this model, like this is an initial run where you do see the you see that when the model is running, it can capture the seasonal variation in the oxygen benthic oxygen uptake, and multi-year timescales. So this is like a very initial run. So we still do have few issues to solve for some of the things. So this is the very initial run for it, but we are on the process of creating like a more longer run for the coupled model. So this is like a in a very active development stage at this point. Okay, so that was kind of the most of it, and then so the next steps is basically to run the coupled model, basically the MOM6, Cobalt, and SeaBed together, to calculate global budgets, perform experiments, etc. And for the next SeaBed version 2, our aim would be to incorporate carbonate cycle, calcium carbonate cycle into the sediment, which is right now not doesn't exist in the V1, and also more explicit representation of the other anaerobic processes. And then also the efforts would be to couple this model for the regional domains. Okay, at this point I will stop, and uh for if you have any, I'd be really happy to answer any questions and take feedback, and anything about this model development processes. So yeah, at this point I'll just stop, and if someone have any question, I'll really be really happy to answer. And also if anybody has any feedback, so please, um we would be really happy to hear from you, because this is just basically a very developmental phase right now.
All right, so for questions, please raise your hand.
Okay.
I see Keith Lindsay. I'll help you field the questions or put your questions in the chat. So Keith, you're up.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Thanks for your introduction and overview of SeaBed. I appreciate this. I have a question about processes that you are, or maybe I missed this at the beginning, but are you including phosphorus, silica, or iron in SeaBed currently, or have plans to?
Yeah, so right now we do not have iron, phosphorus, or silica cycles within the seabed. So that is definitely can be done at some point, but not right now. But yeah, we do plan to do the iron at next version of it. Having said that, I mean there is a like a indirect way to do the silica and the phosphate cycle, because right now the cobalt basically uses a Barreal function from John Dunn's empirical relation to bury some of the phosphate or silica into the sediment, and remineralize the rest, and efflux it back to the water column. So with this seabed model, we now have a much more better like a mechanistic way of burying the organic carbon. So we can use that information to basically calculate the phosphate and silica fluxes, benthic fluxes accordingly, and pass it back. So that's what we are doing right now. And for the iron right now, we are just using empirical information for which was already existent in the um, which was already there in the cobalt. So we are using Andy Dale's 2015 papers empirical formulation to to get the benthic iron fluxes. So we haven't changed that, but maybe in the next version we'll try to do.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
would oh,
Uh,
did you?
I was just saying thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Kate.
Yeah, that's actually here kind of incorporated into this more explicit representation of anaerobic processes. As you may expect, if we incorporate explicit ion cycle, it may have yeah, there may be a lot of additional tuning because the sediment is the largest source of iron into the oceans. So so that it would obviously be very exciting to have a fully coupled iron cycle that connects in the Earth system model that connects from the land, atmosphere, sediments into the ocean. But that would be a, a it would be a big step and a longer tuning process. Anyway, um, next up, Christophe.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Very nice talk, very interesting. I just have one question that sort of puzzled me when I saw your presentation. Does your station C? I understand that it's the validation of the model. I understand that it's in the OMZ somewhere on the West Coast, and I was wondering how you get to this very high concentration of organic carbon that you mentioned, and what type of organic carbon is represent there? If it's like more like, I think I see the more like a refractory, the OM3, but yeah, could you comment a little bit on that? And then I have another question, but for this one.
Yes, yes. So yeah, thank you for the question. And yeah, I mean, so essentially what we have is we have this we have in the like the organic matter for the organic matter decay rate. We have at like a coefficient which kind of reduces the organic matter decay when there is no oxygen. So denitrification goes much slower than the aerobic respiration, and any other anoxic respiration goes much slower than the denitrification. So that's essentially what causes the preservation in this case. And we also had a way to kind of determine the fraction of organic matter 1, 2, 3 at different kind of areas according to the like a depth. So that also helped a lot in achieving this fit. So this is also one thing is that we are just using 5 site for model validation. How does it perform at other anaerobic OMZ sites also would be a very would be like super curious to check, which we haven't done yet, but yeah, maybe at some point we will check. So essentially, this is basically slowing down the decay of the organic matter with with different kind of electron acceptors as a respiration. And yeah, and you can see, so essentially what basically the organic matter one, you can see the fast decaying portion that essentially gets degraded even if it is a oxygen minimum zone. But what really matters is the organic matter like the two, which is the intermediate reactivity organic matter. So that's what essentially at least in this situation determines the bulk of the preservation.
Just to make things clear, the K associated to each of these K1, 2, and 3. So you're saying that they are sort of linked to they are you don't tune these for this special model. You have like an it's calculated over the entire ocean, or also how do you get these K? Because it's really fundamental for getting a good fit to this to the TOC in the sediment. So
Yes.
get to this.
Yes, so I use the approach of Archer 2002 for determining the K, which is essentially like this is essentially a relation between the organic matter flux to the seafloor. Radis model also uses Oliver Sulpice also uses the same kind of um, the model structure, and then we tune the coefficients for that. So that was one part of it. What we introduced another part is the fractionation of the organic matter 1, 2, 3. So that also kind of helped achieving this. So that's what kind of like, so there are like two parts of it. One was basically getting the organic matter decay rate of one organic matter fraction 1, 2, and 3, and then there was another layer to it, which is essentially what would be the fraction of organic matter 1, 2, 3 in the bulk POC that is reaching the seafloor. So there is these two controlling factors essentially acting together to determine the decay rate of the bulk of the organic matter into the sediment. So that's what it was. And again, so there was another third layer was basically slowing down the decay under different electron acceptors when it's decaying organic matter. So yeah, so these were the basically three layers essentially acting together.
All right, Chris?
Hello.
Hi, Subhadeep. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I was really curious about the kind of the nitrate versus the ammonium fluxes in and out of the sediments, right? And is
Yes.
there like
Yeah.
a spatial? Yeah, okay, yeah, I was trying to follow this, but yeah, and like, do some areas really ha like at least on a large scale?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have more denitrification, or how much ammonium flux is actually out of the sediments can occur relative to nitrate flux in the sediments? And, does that differ a lot in different settings?
Yeah, so I mean, so for the nitrogen cycle parameters, most of the parameters are essentially constant, so we do not really vary. So we had this nitrification, so we have nitrification, NMOX, and denitrification. So these are the three nitrogen cycle processes. The rate constants for the nitrification and NMOX is constant throughout the seafloor. The denitrification essentially is basically organic matter decay. So that is determined by all these decay rate of the organic carbon, and the half saturation rate is also like a pretty much a constant throughout the seafloor for the denitrification, like the oxygen half saturation or the nitrate half saturation in the sediment. So the trends or the direction of the fluxes at different sites basically comes out of the model essentially with these parameters. So what you can see is like here you see a very high influx of nitrate, which essentially, because this is essentially oxygen minimum zone, so you do not have nitrification going on into the sediment. So most of the demand for nitrate is being for the organic matter respiration, nitrate is being basically sucked out of the ocean. So that
Right.
is
So, I mean, yeah, so like on a global scale, I'm just wondering if you knew roughly off the top of your head, like how much ammonium comes out of the sediments versus how
yeah.
much nitrate is essentially lost. Because like even in this setting you showed there, it looks like the ammonium coming out already kind of compensates the nitrate loss you have in the sediments, right? And I think this is something
Yeah.
that's kind of overlooked. And do we have
Yes.
enough good evidence to really constrain the ammonium versus the nitrate? Because I think in the data slide, you basically just had DIN. So I was wondering
Yes.
if that how well that is constrained in the model.
So yeah, well, that is actually a good question. And the constant in the sense, so for it, we generally use these fluxes,
Mhm.
all these fluxes, and see if it is kind of capturing the order of magnitude variance or the direction of the benthic fluxes that we have when we have. Another independent variation check was that the determination of the denitrification rate into the sediment in the sediment predicted by the model and compared to the other empirical findings. And in this one, DIN we are showing, but it's essentially either ammonia or nitrate. So the black line is the ammonia and the red line is the nitrate. So you see for the coastal sites, the ammonia profile was like much well predicted, and we do not really see nitrate into the sediment in coastal sites because it's like all gone into the very top. But on the other hand, in the deep ocean, you do not get any ammonia build up into the pore waters. All are ammonia, all are nitrate, and so this also kind of matches. So these two were kind of we used for tuning the parameters. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see like when I haven't really calculated the flux, like the flux amount, like the ammonia flux out of the sediment or in, and those kind of stuff. We should do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Olivier.
Yeah, hi everybody, and thank you very much for this presentation. It was nice to see examples of what your model is doing.
Thank
I
you.
had a question about the top boundary conditions for solutes and solids. In particular, when you couple your sediment model with the ocean model, do you happen to have variables that you need for to fill in the top boundary condition that are lacking in the ocean model? And so do you keep some chemical variables constant, or do you really have all the chemical variables you need in the water column above?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you super clearly because it was like a little bit breaking up. Could you
Okay.
repeat once again?
I am wondering about the top boundary conditions. If the conditions that you are using now requires you to have some inputs, some knowledge of the solute composition of the water column above, or some knowledge of solid fluxes that accumulate on the sediments, how do you deal with that? Do you have all those fluxes and chemical compositions ready in the ocean model, or do you keep some of those variables constant?
Yes, this is a really good question. Thanks for the question. And Olivier, I really appreciate the chat we had when we first met in the airport. It was like super good. Thank you for those chats. It was really a lot of inspirations, and how we approach our modeling in our system model. And so I learned a lot from you. So thank you so much. And yes, so talking about the yes, so everything that you see in the model, all the information are read from the ocean model. So in the cobalt we have first organic matter flux, and then we also have the flux of the calcium carbonate, lithogenic material, and all those kind of stuff. So all that, all those fluxes are being used to calculate the sedimentation rate. So we do calculate the sedimentation rate into the sediment by the mass flux that we are getting from the ocean model. And another important factor for the seafloor is the porosity. So for the porosity, there was another machine learning map of that, I think it was Martin 2015, I think, very, very likely. So they created a machine learning map of the seafloor porosity. So we are imposing the porosity from that seafloor map. So these were the two things that we kind of use. So is that the question? Did I answer your query?
Yes, yeah. More or less. I think when you publish your model, I'll read more thoroughly the top boundary condition part, because it seems to be the most complicated part when you want to couple your sediment model to a global scale thing, is that you realize there are variables that you need to enter that you just don't have in most ocean models. So that's what I was wondering about. And then while we're at boundary conditions, I want to ask you also, what's the bottom boundary conditions, especially for the solutes? Are you using, for example, the no flux one that kind of imposes all your solid fluxes to be flat at the bottom part?
Okay. Yeah, for the in the sediment domain, the bottom boundary condition is the zero gradient bottom boundary condition. And for the top one, like the top boundary condition is the flux for the solid and the constant concentration for the solute.
Okay. For the bottom boundary condition, since your sediment column is not very high, for some of the variables, you might see that the profiles look well, they look strange in the bottom parts because you're forcing them to be flat when in reality that's where you would have large gradients. So they
Yes.
are like we've seen that, and we've tried to add all the kinds of boundary conditions. So maybe we can talk about that at
Yeah.
some point,
Yeah. Yeah.
not forcing the gradient to be flat, but using what we named a constant flux. So forcing the flux just above the lower limit to be the same than the flux just below it. And so that makes it
Okay.
more flexible.
Yes, actually true. Yeah, yeah. We always see like, you can see it's kind of getting straight at the end. So it's like for the solutes especially. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed, agreed. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that implementation.
All
Thank you,
right.
Oliver.
Yeah, let's take one last question because we have 2 more minutes. Ming Sheng.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. So yeah, sit last one. Very nice presentation and thank you. I think I probably missed it. So when you run this model for the different site, are you using the same model parameter? So I mean, the parameter is universal for the global ocean.
Yes, it's all, I mean, we haven't tuned, all the parameter or the model construct is same, and the parameter values are also all same. So you can see, I mean, many of the parameters are actually based, set as a function of things that you read from the water column or water column model or the boundary. And so that's basically changes the values in, that's basically a property of the total seabed model. So yeah, we do not vary anything by hand. Everything is constant throughout all runs.
Okay, so then a kind of follow-up question is that do you take into account the different sediment environment in the global ocean? For example, mineral or some other organic content, pore water, all the different substrate information.
Yes. So the way the boundary conditions are handled is basically the organic matter flux, for example, it's a boundary condition to the water, sorry, the sediment model,
Sorry,
which
not the
is
boundary condition. I mean the sediment. So when you, for some place you have more sandy, some place are more muddy, something like that. I mean, do you have those information in your model?
Yes, yes. So that was handled by the porosity. So with porosities, we are imposing a machine learning generated porosity map from the global seafloor to impose the porosity, which should give you like a kind of a proper estimate of the porosity of that location. However, there is a one thing that is a very good point that you have raised, is that in our model, the transport of the solutes are mostly diffusion. So if the site is like a high current zone, high bottom current zone, there will be like a advective velocity, advective transport of the solute within the sediment would be a very big important factor. So that is not taken into account. So that is a limitation, I would say, that we have right now, and we have to somehow come up with something. So this is something I would be really interested. And if we somehow create the advective flow, let's say for sandy sediments, so there could be, if there is a like a high current into the bottom water, there will be like the solute mix, like solute transport would be advection dominated, which is not the case in our model right now. So yeah, those are some of the big I would say model limitation right now. So thanks for the question. I think that is very important,
Okay,
actually.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you everybody for your attention. So the next webinar that we have is on June 25th at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, by Olivier Sopis and Hene van de Zandt on the RADI model. So if you would like to attend that as well, there is a registration link on our website that's posted there by May. And then lastly, if there's anyone who wants to give a presentation on a sediment model, please fill out our interest form and we would love to hear from you. So thank you very much. Thank you, Subhadeep, and thank everyone for your questions and your attention.
Thank you all. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'd be really happy to hear from you. Either question or feedback or any discussion, please feel free.